Welcome. Today, we're going to tell a story. It's a really powerful one, drawn straight from the source material we've looked at, about the life and, sadly, the tragic death of Bergen, who was just this absolute icon in Turkish music back in the 1980s.
Yeah, the sources really lay it all out. You have this incredible talent, this huge professional success on one side.
Right.
But then woven through it, there's this thread of, intense personal hardship, and particularly a relationship that just had these devastating consequences. It's heartbreaking, really.
Absolutely. So our aim here is to walk you through the story as it's presented in these sources. We want to unpack the key moments, the highs and the deep, deep lows, to get a sense of who Bergen was, her impact, but also, importantly, the really tough societal issues that her story brings to the surface. We're basically laying out her life from this material.
And, like a lot of stories, this one starts, perhaps surprisingly, on a pretty happy note.
Yeah, right at the beginning. We learn her birth name was Belgen Saralamasher, born July 15th, 1959, in Mersin, Turkey. And the sources, they describe her early childhood as, happy and bright.
Mm-hmm.
Even though her parents weren't wealthy, she was the youngest of 7 kids, 6 older brothers, and the sources really emphasize she got a huge amount of love and care from her family.
And that focus on the family, that closeness, it suggests it was a really important foundation for her early on.
So things took a turn quite early. When she was only 7, her parents divorced. She ended up moving to Ankara just with her mother.
Okay.
It was there, though, in primary school, Hylar Primary School, that her amazing talent for music really started showing.
Right. The sources say singing just came naturally to her, like it was just this gift she had. She played the mandolin, too.
And people noticed, her teachers, her friends, they saw this spark in her and really encouraged her.
Yeah, they recognized the potential.
And she definitely had ambition. She aimed high, She wanted to get into the Ankara State Conservatory, which was and is really prestigious.
And she didn't just get in.
No! That's what's amazing. In the sources, she passed the entrance exam ranked number 1. Just incredible. She started studying piano there.
And even then, as a student, the sources suggest she was already kind of a rising star, right?
Yeah.
Doing some sessions, starting to get fans.
It really looked like her path was set, Music was clearly it.
But then life, as it often does, throws a curveball. The sources explain that things got tough financially at home.
Yeah, really tough. And Bergen had to make a really hard decision. She dropped out of the conservatory to help support her mother.
Wow.
And her first job wasn't singing, it was working at the Turkish post office. Quite a change.
Yeah, definitely. And it's probably worth mentioning, because the sources do, that there was this rumor about an early marriage, maybe even a child around then.
Right, a son named Hakan.
But the sources are pretty clear that later on, in her official biography, both she and her family denied this was true. So we're sticking with that account from the biography.
Exactly, relying on what's confirmed there. So, after leaving her studies, taking that post office job, she didn't completely give up on music. She started singing again, but just informally, with friends.
Just for the love of it, sounds like.
Pretty much. And then comes this key moment, this turning point back towards her dream. The sources describe how one night she's singing with friends at the Ankara Büyük İfes nightclub.
And the owner hears her?
Exactly. The owner, Hüseyin Altine, he heard her voice, saw her potential right away, and offered her a proper job as a resident singer.
So that was her big break, really. Back on stage professionally.
Yeah, her chance. And working with a band there, as the sources note, really let her hone her skills, her stage presence, blending Turkish classical and pop music.
Developing her craft.
And she was just captivating. Her voice, her presence. She got popular really fast at that club. Over the next year, people were flocking to see her.
And that popularity naturally led to bigger things. She got scouted for a larger venue, a definite step up.
Right. She moved to the Kubali Casino in Adana, became a resident singer there.
A bigger stage.
Definitely. Although the sources do add this little detail, apparently while she was there, she sometimes got caught up in gambling at the casino and lost some money doing that.
Okay. But it was there, in Adana, after maybe 8 months at that casino, that she met someone who would just tragically shape the rest of her life.
Halis Serbest. Described in the sources as a businessman, maybe an investor.
And the way the sources tell it, he was instantly obsessed with her.
Yeah, love at first sight, from his side, is how the source puts it. He pursued her really intensely, visiting the club all the time, showering her with flowers, non-stop.
The dynamic sounds like she wasn't really interested at first, right? But he was just so persistent that he eventually wore her down.
Exactly. And the most devastating part, When they started dating, she had absolutely no idea he was already married.
With 3 kids.
Yeah, a huge secret he kept from her.
And the sources also point out that even before finding that out, Bergen was already noticing some worrying signs in him.
Like what?
His controlling nature, apparently. And a quick temper, red flags, even early on, documented in the material.
Wow. So when she did find out the truth about his family, what was her reaction?
Anger. Immediate anger, according to the sources. And she ended it, right then and there. Said she wouldn't be involved with a married man. Made her position very clear.
Good for her. But knowing what comes next, he didn't just accept that, did he?
No, not at all. He refused to let go. And this really started that awful cycle. Him pursuing her relentlessly, her desperately trying to escape this relationship that was clearly becoming toxic.
He kept chasing her, apparently making promises he'd leave his wife and kids, which Bergen felt was wrong anyway.
Right. So she tried to put distance between them again. She actually changed jobs, moving back to Ankara to sing at the Ankara Butte Casino.
Trying to get away.
Exactly. But that move was also another step up professionally for her. It brought her closer to the national scene.
And this is when she adopted her stage name, right? Bergen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inspired by the city in Norway, the sources say. She thought it sounded beautiful.
And she started performing alongside some really big names in Turkish music then. It cemented her goal, to be a national star. The sources say her potential was right up there with the best.
So it's that contrast again, isn't it? Professionally, things were going great, lucky in game, as the saying goes.
But personally, unlucky in love. Halis was still after her, even though she tried to get away.
And then somehow, and this is hard to understand from the outside,
Yeah.
the sources say she eventually gave him another chance.
After everything.
Yeah, it led to this sort of on-again, off-again thing before they actually got legally married. January 9th, 1982.
Wow. And that marriage. The sources paint a pretty grim picture of what came next.
They really do. Instead of bringing any kind of stability, it's described as the point where her life just took a sharp downturn.
The abuse. It escalated dramatically, didn't it?
Terribly. The sources detail how he became incredibly controlling, verbally abusive, just consumed by this intense jealousy. He didn't want her singing, didn't want anyone admiring her.
And it became physical.
Yes. The sources state clearly that he became physically abusive towards her. And they also mention he was having affairs himself during this time.
Gosh, she must have been suffering immensely. Physically, mentally.
Absolutely. The sources describe her reaching a breaking point. She knew she couldn't stay. She wanted out, separation, divorce.
But he wouldn't let her go.
No, he refused. And instead just harassed her relentlessly, making these chilling threats, which are documented. Things like, I will find you, and I won't let you start a new relationship. Just terrifying.
It sounds like a nightmare, though the sources mention a brief moment during one of their separations.
Oh.
It'll light.
Yeah, small flicker. She apparently formed a friendship with a male colleague. And the sources describe this as bringing her some comfort, some warmth, good memories, something she hadn't really experienced for a long time.
A short moment of happiness.
Very short, yeah. It really highlights just how hard it is to break free from these abusive cycles, doesn't it?
It really does, and that brings us to, well, the truly horrific turning point. October 31st, 1982. Halloween.
Yeah. She'd just finished performing at a club in Izmir. She was getting into a taxi with her mother.
And a man approached them.
Yes. Suddenly.
Oh.
And he threw liquid from a can straight onto her face.
Oh my God.
The sources even quote Bergen's own description of that moment. Just sheer terror. She said she went blind instantly, and the next thing she heard was her mother screaming.
How awful. Did people help?
Yes. Bystanders and her mother reacted incredibly quickly, trying to rinse her face, get the contaminated clothes off. Basic first aid on the spot.
And at the hospital.
They identified the substance, nitric acid, highly corrosive industrial chemical.
The injuries. They must have been devastating.
Absolutely horrific. Severe burns on her face, parts of her body, and tragically, she permanently lost the sight in one of her eyes.
Unbelievable.
Acid attacks. The sources really emphasize the lasting impact. It's not just the physical scars, the disfigurement. It's the deep, deep psychological trauma that stays with someone forever.
How long was she in the hospital?
45 days, the sources say. 45 days of just immense physical pain, and you can only imagine the psychological agony.
Did she get support?
From her fans, yes. The sources highlight this outpouring of support she received. But they also make a point of saying that Halis, he never visited her once while she was in the hospital.
Not surprising, I guess, given what came next, the
He
investigation.
revealed the sickening truth. Halis was behind it. He'd hired the man who threw the acid.
He paid someone to do that to his own wife.
Yeah, reportedly paid him 500,000 lira. The sources convert that to roughly a million Thai baht, just to give a sense of scale.
The whole country must have been in shock.
Absolutely. The sources convey that sense of disbelief. How could a husband orchestrate something so brutal? Halis was eventually arrested after being on the run for over 2 months.
And the trial for the acid attack, what was the outcome?
Initially, the sources report he was sentenced to 12 years in prison.
12 years for that.
Exactly. And the sources strongly emphasized that the public felt that was nowhere near enough. Just completely insufficient, given the irreversible damage he'd caused.
So, after going through something so horrific,
Yeah.
the physical pain, losing her sight in one eye, the emotional trauma, how did she even begin to cope?
The sources describe her as having this almost unimaginable inner strength. Despite everything, the disfigurement, the blindness, the depression, the anxiety, which was all very real, she was incredibly resilient.
She focused on recovery.
Yeah, she channeled everything into getting better. Physical therapy helped. And she was absolutely determined to sing again, to get her career back.
Her story must have touched so many people.
It really did. She became an inspiration. There was this plastic surgeon, Dr. Honor Errol, who was apparently so moved by her situation.
What does he do?
He offered to perform reconstructive surgery on her face, completely free of charge. An incredible gesture.
Did the surgery help?
It significantly improved her appearance, the sources say. But unfortunately, it couldn't restore the sight in her damaged eye.
So that's why she had that distinctive look, covering the eye with her hair.
Exactly. That became her signature look, born out of tragedy. Covering the injured side of her face and her eye, it was her way of dealing with it visually.
And she did return to music.
She did, with incredible strength. And she had support, too, from people like the songwriter Cengiz Özkan.
And her career after the attack.
It didn't just recover, it exploded. Her talent was undeniable, of course, but the public also had this huge wave of empathy and support for her after everything she'd endured. She became an even bigger superstar.
I remember hearing about her song Woman of Sorrow.
Huge hit, 1985. It sold over 1 million copies, became like an anthem. The sources even mentioned this claim about her being the best-selling female Arab artist internationally in 1986.
Arab artist. But she was Turkish.
Yeah, that's an interesting detail from the source material. She was absolutely Turkish, but it seems that's maybe how her international reach was categorized or perceived at the time in that particular source.
Yeah.
It's worth noting.
Okay. And the success kept coming.
Oh, yeah. Gold records, gold cassettes in 87. She even starred in her first movie that year, A Woman of Pain, based on her own life story, naturally.
She really became this symbol, didn't she? Especially for women.
Absolutely, an icon of strength. The sources describe how her ability to overcome such profound trauma and rebuild her life and career inspired so many people facing their own struggles.
And she used her platform, too. Spoke out.
Yes, very actively. Drawing directly from her own horrific experience, she campaigned against domestic violence against women. She wasn't silent about it.
But even with all that success, the danger wasn't completely gone, was it?
No, sadly not. The sources mention another terrifying incident, an attempted stabbing attack while she was actually performing on stage in Adana.
Oh my God. On stage.
Yeah. Security thankfully intervened, stopped it from being much worse, but she still got minor injuries. It shows the threat was still there.
She kept making music through all this.
She did. Released another album, Insen Verse, poured her experiences into her art.
But just when it seemed like maybe, finally, she'd found some stability, some peace, despite everything.
The past came back. The sources reveal another shocking twist. In 1988, Halis was released from prison.
Already, he only got 12 years for the acid attack.
He served about 6 of them. The sources suggest maybe good behavior was cited as a reason for the early release.
6 years for that kind of attack. And then, what did he do?
He saw Bergen out,
Yeah.
found her again after his release, and this is almost impossible to believe.
What?
The sources state that she gave him another chance. She actually tried to reconcile with him.
After he hired someone to throw acid in her face? How? Why?
It's deeply complex. The sources mention speculation that maybe, despite everything, she still held some kind of deep, complicated love for him. It's hard to fathom from the outside.
Did it work, the reconciliation?
No, not at all. The sources indicate it just immediately went back to the same toxic pattern, controlling, abusive. And apparently, he started using her money too. She was a huge star by then, earning a lot.
So she finally had enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
The sources describe her reaching her absolute limit. This time she ended it permanently told him unequivocally, no more chances. This was it.
And his reaction.
Rage. Utter rage at being finally rejected. And then, according to the sources, he started stalking her.
Oh, no.
Which leads us to the final tragic confrontation. June 1989. Brian was back in Adana doing a show to promote her latest album, Vila Alam.
Was she alone?
No. Thankfully, she was traveling with her mother, which she often did. Probably for support, maybe even for safety.
Oh, what happened?
Outside their hotel, Hallis confronted them both. The sources describe him just desperately begging Bergen to take him back to reconcile again.
And Bergen.
Maybe she felt a bit safer with her mother there. She did speak to him, but she stood her ground. She refused his pleas. Firmly. He became enraged, completely lost control. The sources state he pulled out a gun.
No!
And he shot Bergen at close range. And then he shot her mother, too.
Oh my God. Both of them.
Yes. Hallis fled the scene immediately. People nearby rushed to help, but it was too late for Bergen. She died right there. She was only 30 years old.
Just 30. Killed by him. By his rage, his jealousy. What about her mother?
Miraculously, her mother survived. She got medical treatment in time.
Did she identify him?
Yes. The sources are clear. The mother told the police it was Hallis who shot them, right after Bergen refused to reconcile. She also recounted his history, the threats, the stalking. It was all laid bare.
Where did Hallis go?
He fled the country, went to Germany.
But they found him.
Yes, eventually. Thanks to international cooperation, as the sources note, he was arrested in Germany.
Did he face justice there?
He served some time in prison in Germany, about 3 years, the sources say. Then he was extradited back to Turkey to stand trial specifically for Bergen's murder.
That trial must have been huge news in Turkey.
Immense.
Yeah.
National attention. Everyone knew Bergen. Everyone knew the story. The shock was palpable.
And the verdict for her murder.
This is where it becomes truly controversial, almost unbelievable. The sources report he was sentenced to only 7 months in prison for murdering Bergen.
7 months. For murder. After the acid attack, the stalking, everything.
Exactly. 7 months. The sources heavily detail the public reaction, just widespread disbelief, dissatisfaction, outrage. People couldn't reconcile his history of violence with such a lenient sentence for actually taking her life.
I can imagine. The story didn't end there, did it? What about her family?
No, the sources mention ongoing coverage, interviews with her family members afterward.
And they reported still being afraid.
Yes. They reported receiving threats from Hallis, even after all this, threats to kill them, threats to desecrate Bergen's grave. Just awful.
Desecrate her grave.
Yeah, and there's this incredibly sad detail in the sources. Her mother, in her grief and fear, actually had a protective cage built around Bergen's grave to try and protect it.
That's heartbreaking. That poor woman, her mother, witnessing the murder.
The sources paint a picture of just profound, lasting grief, describing how her mother visited the grave every single day, always wearing black. And she had these rituals, like making 2 cups of coffee every morning, one for herself, one for Bergen, as if she were still there, trying to hold on to her somehow.
What a devastating story. So, Bergen's legacy, how is she remembered?
Well, as the sources show, it's complex but powerful. She's remembered, of course, as this incredibly talented artist, a superstar who overcame so much trauma. But she's also this enduring icon of strength and resilience.
And a symbol, too, right? In the fight against violence.
Absolutely. Her tragic death really cemented her status as a symbol in the fight against domestic violence, violence against women, particularly in Turkey. But her story gained international recognition, too.
There was a movie about her recently.
Yeah, the sources mention a biographical film came out in 2022, which shows her story still resonates. Though, they also note some controversy, apparently. The film was banned in Hallis Serbest's hometown.
Interesting. So, looking back at everything the sources laid out, what's the main takeaway for you?
It's hard to pick just one thing. But beyond the immense personal tragedy, it really forces you to think about, well, the incredible resilience someone can have in the face of such horrific abuse, but also the devastating power dynamics in controlling relationships. And it definitely raises huge questions about justice systems, don't you think? Are they really protecting people?
Yeah, absolutely. Her story, and especially the public reaction to the sentences he received, as documented in the sources, it just highlights this ongoing, urgent need for more awareness, better intervention, and real change when it comes to domestic violence.
It's a story that really stays with you. Makes you think about the darkness that can hide behind fame and the terrible cost of violence that goes unchecked.
Well, thank you for joining us today as we walk through this very difficult but important story, piecing it together from the source material you shared. We really hope exploring these details has given you a deeper understanding of Bergen's life, her struggles, her incredible strength, and her lasting impact.
It's certainly a story that deserves to be remembered, for many reasons.
If you found this story compelling and you value the work we do exploring these narratives, please do consider supporting us. You can like this, share it, and subscribe to our channel, Horror Docs. Your support really does help us continue bringing these deep dives to you.
We appreciate you listening.
Until next time, keep digging, keep exploring.